Hey everybody, I know you're stuck at home for a few weeks, so I thought it would be fun if we did a little painting together, you in your house and me in my house. And the one I picked, nice, simple. Some of you may have done this before, but if you haven't tried the Northern Lights painting, this one is really awesome. It's just got a few steps, really fun. See if you can get your mom to paint with you. I think she would enjoy it too. And you'll learn a lot, and in the end you'll have this beautiful little painting. Before you start though, you probably have to take a little trip to Dollarama, and I'm going to start by showing you what you'll need to pick up there. Alright, so what you're going to need from Dollarama, unless you already have some of the stuff, really important to start with, you always need white for pretty much any painting you ever do. So lots of white. We've got our black. You can see how much black we need in this painting, so make sure you have lots of black. For your colors, we're going to need a peacock blue. Notice this is a really nice dark blue. Then I have got tropical blue, also from Dollarama. And then there's a couple optional colors. So if you've got some sort of turquoise hanging around, that is gonna come in nicely for some of these Northern Lights here. If you don't have turquoise or you can't find it, the tropical blue will also actually work for the lights. But if you can get your hands on some turquoise, that would be fabulous. And lastly, this is an optional color too, any sort of deep dark purple. It's really subtle and it's optional. So you can do the painting even if you don't have this purple. Lastly, your brushes. You're gonna need a thick brush. So this one is probably about, I'm going to say it's 1 centimeter wide, but you could do wider, you could do narrower. It's probably fine, whatever you have around the house. And an itty bitty brush. So it's small, but more importantly, it's got a nice thin point on it. And that point is what you're going to need for all these fine details here. 2 more things, toothpick and a little piece of chalk. If you can't find chalk, just use a pencil. It'll work just as well for you. So there are all our materials. Again, this is Dollarama canvas. This is Dollarama paint, deco art, and it's actually pretty decent for Dollarama. So go crazy at the store and come on back and we'll start painting. Okay, so we're all ready to start. Before I start, I'm just going to stick a little piece of paper under my canvas so I don't get my countertop dirty. And you might want to just find an old piece of newspaper or something so you don't make a big mess. Alright, so we've put out on a disposable plate are some black, some peacock blue, or your dark blue that you've bought, and your tropical blue, or whatever light blue you have. And when you squeeze it out, I always just imagine the size of a loonie. That's about all you need. If you put too much out, you just end up wasting a lot of paint, so just a little bit there. I've put it out on a disposable plate, and you can actually use any kind of plate. Even if you don't have disposable plates, you could put it on one of your dinner plates and run it through the dishwasher. It's acrylic paint, so that's not dangerous. As long as it's clean after, you can totally eat off of it and there won't be any problems. So we are ready to go. Let's imagine that the Northern Lights are not there and the trees are not there. We're just going to paint this beautiful sky that goes from black to dark blue to light blue. And you can see the gradation there. It's quite beautiful. So we're going to start with our black at the top. So just grabbing some on my brush, I'm going to get going across the top of the canvas. You don't have to make the paint blobby. You don't have to make it particularly thin. I'm just going to say go for a nice, normal, even coverage. And I'm going to take this color down about 1/5 of the way down the canvas. Just like that. So my canvas is this big. It's approximately 1/5. And now I'm going to make a mixture. Now pull some black over here. Same amount of dark blue and mix it together in a nice little pile. So now we have a nice mixture of these 2 colors put together. And that's going to be my next area. And this is also going to be about 1/5 of the canvas. So you'll see when I apply it, and when you apply it, it's going to look pretty similar to the color you have on there already, but it will be slightly lighter. And because it's a subtle difference, it will allow you to blend it nicely. So I'm going down to about here with that color. All right, you'll notice there's no line between the two colors. If you're getting a line, all you have to do while it's still wet is sweep back and forth across the line like this, and they will blend together. But you got to do that soon. Once the color's dry, you can't blend them anymore, so do that right away. Okay, so then we're going to move on to our next section. Section 1 was pure black. Section 2 was a mixture, black and blue. Section 3 is going to be plain dark blue. So that's going right underneath, and really important to blend the colors together so that you don't get a line. So I'm just going to do some sweeping over here. Sweep away any sort of line so it's beautifully blended. And then I'll finish up to about halfway through the canvas. So you'll notice we're not washing our brushes in between colors. We're also not adding water. You want to keep this paint pure. That's the best way. That's the way it's meant to be used. All right, so I'm a little over halfway down, which is where you should be, but this is all approximate. So no worries if you're a little higher or a little lower. It will still work out for you. Okay, so see how we've got a nice blend happening. Next step, remember the mixture that we made here? We're going to do the same, only now we're going to mix these two. So I'm going to take a nice big scoop of the dark blue, and I'm going to add a scoop of the light blue. It's about the same amount of each. 50% dark blue, 50% light blue. So I've mixed that together, and that's going right underneath the color we did before. So right away, I'm going to take care of that blend while it's nice and wet. Do you see how beautifully they'll blend together when they're still wet? Don't let it dry, or you will be stuck with a line in the middle of the sky. So now that I'm happy with the blend, I'll just, oops, I made a mistake there. Don't do what I did. I'm going to grab this color and just bring it down a little further. So this is again still the mixture. When I grabbed a scoop of that, that was not the right color. All right, nicely blended, and we're ready for the last step of the background, which is now going to be the pure peacock blue. Grab a little bit and right away get your blend. Like that, and now that I'm happy with the blend, I can just fill all the way to the bottom with my peacock blue. So this looks really, really cool already. Even before you've got the trees, even before you've got the northern lights. It's a pretty neat little background. And it's nicely blended. Okay, now that our background is finished, you should go wash your brush because we're done with the big brush for now. And if you just leave it sitting here till you need it again, the paint is all going to get dried out in there and you'll have to throw your brush away. So let's go wash out our brushes. Okay, did you get it nice and clean? Right? Make sure all that paint is out of there. And if you take care of your brushes, they will last you a really long time. But we always have to remember to wash them if we're not going to be using them for a while. All right, it is time to move on to the trees. The trees are probably the trickiest part of the painting, but I'm sure you can do it. You just have to follow the steps. If you see these trees here on the sample, they've got some snow on them. And today, because it's supposed to be a nice spring day tomorrow, and I feel a little bit of spring in the air today, I'm not going to put snow on the trees. That's just a little bit for today. So we're just going to paint some black silhouetted trees all across the bottom of the canvas. So one thing you might want to do is just take a little break to make sure that your background is nice and dry. If you start trying to draw these trees on wet paint, it might get kind of gucky and it might smear around. So maybe give it 5 minutes to dry, and once it's not sticky anymore, you'll be ready to go. So let's talk about the trees a little bit. We've got a bunch of trees going across the bottom, and you're going to see right away that some of the trees really tall. This one almost hits halfway, right? If you marked halfway off your canvas, this one is almost all the way up to half. This one is so tiny, it's only like 2.5 fingers tall. So it's really important to put variety in the size of your trees. Variety is one of the principles of design. So important when you're painting nature, because nature is full of variety. You would never see a row of trees that was all exactly the same height and the same shape. So I'm going to show you how to get these trees going. Let's start with this big one. So this is the one that almost reaches halfway. The first step for a tree is just to draw with your chalk a straight line and establish how high you want it to be. Then what you're going to do is grab your little brush that has that really nice point, and we're going to paint it with black. Now my regular students know that I love to tell them this little part about the little brushes. The little brushes are not meant to bend, right? So one thing that you should never do with a little brush, and I have a really nasty little brush here that someone has bent, so it doesn't have a point anymore. See that? So this is what somebody did with it. They were like going like that with it. That is how you wreck a brush. So keep your brushes really nice and neat. Don't be twisting them around like this, and don't ever be poking them on your canvas or fiddling like this on your plate. And if you take good care of them, they will last you a very long time. So we're going to take a little bit on the tip, and we're just going to stand our brush up tall and paint in this line. And that line represents the trunk of our first tree. So you'll notice that I've got the brush pointing tall. I don't have it like this. A lot of you are going to want to paint like this, the way you hold your pencil when you're writing or doing math. But this isn't math, this isn't writing, this is art, and we have to stand that brush up really tall so that you're pointing with the tip. That's going to make all the difference. All right, we've got the first part done. Now you're going to grab your chalk again and give yourself guidelines to show you how wide the tree will be at its different heights. So see how that sort of indicates a cone? So when I'm painting, if I stay in those lines, by the time I'm finished the tree will have that beautiful cone shape. Okay, so these are just guidelines. At the end of the painting, you're just going to erase them. They'll come right off. But for now, they're very important. So here's what we do. We're going to put these little side branches on. And the only thing you have to remember is not to go outside of your guidelines. So this line should not go way out to here, right? You got to keep them very small. At the top of your tree, those lines are going to be just maybe dots. Like they're super little. They're not long at all. And you'll get a chance to make long ones as we go down. So see how I'm just sort of filling in these branches? And when I get to the chalk, I stop. So again, remember that when I was telling you about variety in the heights of the trees, we also want some variety in the way we paint these guys. One thing you don't want to do is this. See how there's no variety there? They're too predictable, they're too much the same. You want to make them interesting. You want to sort of mess them up a little bit here and there. Maybe these two got really close together and this one is a little wider, more distance. So think variety. Think about nature and how various nature is. And that's how we want to be painting this. So as I'm going down, we're getting wider and wider and wider. And as long as you follow those chalk lines that you made, your tree, by the time you're finished, is going to be a perfect cone shape. I'm going to be carrying these branches right off the bottom of the canvas. So we're not going to be seeing little stumps on the bottom. We're going to pretend that their stumps are somewhere down here and that it's being cropped out of the canvas a bit. All right, so we're done our first tree and you're ready to try another one. Now remember variety. This one is this tall. So the next one we do, maybe it can be tall also, but it shouldn't be the same height. So let's head over and go down a little bit. Let's make our next tree this tall. And we're going to use the same approach. Start with a line. And using a nice tall brush, we're going to paint that in as a trunk. If you're painting fine details like this and something goes wrong, say we accidentally go, woo, whoops, there's a little mistake there. One thing you have to try to make sure you don't do, don't try to fix that. Because what happens is you can try to just make the rest thicker And when you're painting trees, if you try to make mistakes or fix mistakes, you actually tend to make the mistakes worse. So let's just leave those mistakes. Don't worry about them. You can always cover them up, but try not to overwork that line. So we're going to grab the chalk again, and we're going to chalk in our guidelines for that cone shape. And again, we'll just work these tiny little ones at the top. They're almost as big as dots. Like they're just tiny little guys. And as we go down, we're going to hit those guidelines and just stop when you get to a guideline. Try not to go out of the lines, just like coloring. Okay, so you're remembering variety. I'm going to put two branches really close together, and then this one is going to be farther away, just so that we've got that great principle of variety happening. Okay, so now they're getting really wide at the bottom. And we're almost at the bottom, but remember, don't stop here with the branches. Just carry them right off the bottom of the canvas. Just like that. All right, it is time for some of the little trees. So we can do some overlapping here. Do you see how this tree and that tree have some area here where they're overlapping? That's a good thing. You want overlapping. Like I said earlier, in nature, you're not going to see all these trees like perfectly lined up, not touching each other. So there's our trunk line, painted in. Add the guidelines. And see how they're just going to overlap? Just let them overlap. All that chalk is going to brush off at the end, so that all doesn't matter. All right, so we'll do our side branches. Again, if I'm painting too fast for you, just hit the pause button and I'll meet you at the next step. So we are just going to keep going here until you are happy with the amount of trees that you have. Maybe you've done 3 and you like the way 3 looks, then just leave 3. It's totally up to you how many you're going to put in. I'm going to do a few more because I like these wee little guys. I think they're cute. So I'm going to add a few more here, but you go ahead and do whatever you would like at this point to your trees. You be as creative as you like, but just remember to be nice to your brush. Keep a beautiful point on that brush, so that it's happy and pointy for your next painting. There's one baby tree. Don't forget to overlap when you need to. And think about variety. All the way off the bottom of the canvas. And I'm going to do one more little guy right there. Guidelines and side branches. All right, so then just sort of sit back from your piece and ask yourself, do I like this? Am I happy with all the shapes? Maybe you want to touch something up. Maybe you have a big space somewhere that you feel is too much and you want to fill in a little bit. So take a minute to just always sit back from your painting and see what you think of the painting as a whole. And once you're happy with it, we are going to put some stars up at the top. All right, so we're done with our trees and we're going to go clean our brush. When you clean your little guy, again, you have to clean it carefully too. If you're rough when you're cleaning it, you're going to wreck that point. So let's go clean our brushes. All right, it's time for stars. This is my favorite part of the painting. I love putting the stars across the top. I think they look so beautiful when they're finished. And I really like looking at stars on a clear night in the summer. So to do the stars, it's really simple. This is a quick and easy step. We're just going to put a tiny drop of white, and you literally need a drop. Even this is going to be too much. And this is where you're going to grab your toothpick. So let's have a look at what happens when I dip the toothpick in the paint and apply a star. Do you see how that star is nice and big? That's because I had just put paint on it. But when you look at the sample carefully, you're going to see that the stars are all different sizes. And remember, we were talking about variety. This also applies to the stars. So the last thing you want to do is all the same size stars in a perfect grid pattern. We want variety. So I've dipped that once and I've made this nice big star, but I'm not going to dip it again. I'm just going to keep making stars. And you see how they get smaller and smaller as I go? Because the paint is running out, and that's what you want for variety. So I have made close to about 20 stars with only one dip of the toothpick. And my first star is big, these are a little smaller, and then these ones are these beautiful little subtle stars. So that's the approach for, like, the best method for painting these stars. The second thing, you don't see stars down here in the glow. You only really see them up in the top. So what you want to do is concentrate your stars up here and let them sort of fade away so that by the time you get here, there's not very many. So lots of stars, a few stars, no stars. So let's finish those stars. This stage is so much fun. You're going to like doing the stars. All these pretty little dots. Some people like to make some constellations. You can do that if you like. I make a big dipper here. You could hide a message in there. There, I've hit a little J in the sky. So remember, dip and apply as many stars as you can so that we get lots of variety in the sky. And then we're going to fade out. So there's just a few in the middle and none at the bottom. I think mine needs a few more at the top. So I'm just going to concentrate a whole lot of stars up here. So all those stars, I think I did with maybe 4 dips at the most. You don't need lots of paint. And see how much I have left over. It's almost all still there. So you really don't need too much for that. So again, sit back, ask yourself, do I like these stars? Is there anything I want to fiddle with? My eye is telling me that it wants another big one right there. So you can sort of fiddle around with your own composition and make it interesting. And that's it for the stars. We're not going to use our toothpick again, so you can just toss it in the garbage. We're not going to be using it anymore. So now we are ready for the northern lights, but if you apply the northern lights right now, it's going to smear the stars. So we have to take a short break. So we're going to take maybe 5-ish minutes, and we're going to come back when we're sure that our stars are perfectly dry. So I'll meet you back when your painting is dry. All right, my painting is nice and dry, and I've double checked that all the spots are perfectly dry. There's no sticky spots left. So that means it's time to paint the actual northern lights. This is a great little step. This is also the last step of the painting. Another thing you're going to notice is my chalk lines are gone, and that's because when the painting was dry, and now that yours is dry, you can do the same. You just sort of rub the chalk lines off. They brush right off. You can use a paper towel, you can use your sleeve, and they just come right off. So now you've got it nice and clear, and all those chalk lines are gone. All right, earlier in the video, I had said that if you don't have a turquoise, you could substitute with a tropical blue. This is the same blue that you use down here. So that's an option, but I'm going to be demoing the Northern Lights with my turquoise here. So I put a tiny little bit out on the plate. You don't need much. And I need my brush that we cleaned. This is the same brush that we had used to paint the sky. So it's nice and clean. It's ready to go. Just make sure that there's not a lot of water in there, even if you need to wipe it off on something. It should be nice and dry. It really shouldn't be dripping at this point where your Northern Lights are not going to work super great. So the brush is dry and clean and we are ready for the lights. So have a look at these, how the paint is applied very thinly, and you see what happens up here? It's like the paint starts to run out of the brush, and up here there's hardly any paint left. So it's naturally just running dry, and that's the effect that we want. We want to start off strong, and as we work our way up, we're not going to take more paint. We're just going to let that brush run out so that we get these nice streaky areas. So each light is intense down here, and they just sort of disappear up into the sky. So the way we do this, don't take a big scoop, okay? What you want to do is just barely wet the end of the hairs. So you can see I've hardly got any paint on that brush. And once I've done that, then I'm going to even take it off again. So we have barely anything there. That's what you want. So I'm going to start my first light right here. So do you see how having only a bit of paint on the brush is really working in my favor? Because these lights, I think they're made of gas, right? And gas is not a solid thing. So if you have a big blob of solid paint on your brush, the Northern Lights aren't going to feel quite right. So we want it to be really fuzzy. See how soft and subtle that is? So barely any paint on your brush and you should be good. I feel like a little part of this light would probably peek out on the other side of my tree. So I'm just going to fuzz a bit there too. So that's one of the streaks there. So remember, you can always come back in and make it stronger, but it's really hard to make it less strong. So start off really nice and easy with these. So there's my first one. I'm going to do another one. Again, you just put a little bit on the brush and then wipe it back again. So right, so it's like really dry. So I'm going to have another one starting here. It's going to work its way in a similar curve, and then this one's going to kind of turn that way and sort of go off the edge of the canvas. Do you notice how my brush is almost dry? At this point, you're not going to take more paint. This is where you're tempted to think, oh, I need to scoop some more up, but don't do that. Just let it dry right out so that we get this beautiful, subtle, fuzzy look up here. This is really a nice look for the Northern Lights. Right, so something else that looks quite nice when you do this is, you'll see how they're a bit thinner at the bottom and they kind of fan out at the top. So have some fun experimenting with that fanning. You can see it really well up here. They get a bit thicker. All right, I'll put another one up here. Coming out from the other side of the tree. This one's gonna go out like this. And eventually, you want it to kind of fill up a big chunk of the sky. These are nice and big. They really sweep across that whole sky. So don't make them too small. You want them to really be there. Okay, and kind of enjoy working with that dry, scratchy brush. It's actually kind of fun to do that. Again, make sure that you're using your big brush. Don't ever try to paint like this with your little guy, or you're gonna wreck the point. But these big ones with the bristles, they can handle this kind of scratching around. It's what they're designed for. All right, so now that I've done 3, I'm just gonna ask myself, where does my eye want something else? And usually your eye will tell you where to put more. My eye is telling me to just add a little one down here that comes off this side. I'm gonna have to refill. Gonna fan off the edge. This one's nice and subtle. I think I'll leave it like that. And then my eye wants one just in here a little bit to fill up this negative space. So negative space is space that doesn't have anything in it, and it usually, in some places it's good, but in other places your eye tells you to put something there, and you should listen to your eye, because your eye likes balance. It actually really knows what it's doing. Right, so I'm happy with that. It's a little different from the original, but that doesn't matter. And if yours is different from mine, that doesn't matter either. We want to be creative and fun with this. You can go lower if you like, you can go up here. Just have some fun being creative with your Northern Lights. All right, we had an option at the beginning of some dark purple. I would stay away from any sort of lavender or light purple for this step. And again, this step is optional. If you don't have any purple, just sort of leave it. It's perfectly fine like that. But I have got some nice deep violet. This is not the Dollarama brand. I think this is from Michael's. But I bet if you've got paint in your house, you might be able to find a little bottle of dark purple somewhere. I'm just gonna take a little bit. And the dark purple is really subtle. Notice how you barely see it, but it's there, it's here, and it's happening at the ends where they're fanning out. So I'll show you how to do that. Again, a tiny little bit on the end of your brush, and you don't need to wash your brush between these steps. It's all good, just like this. So I'm gonna start introducing that purple up where it fans out. Just like that. And that just adds a bit of extra color. I don't even know for sure if Northern Lights are purple, but in this painting they are, and that's all good. Another thing about Northern Lights is there are different formations. Some of them kind of look like the hem of a curtain, and those are really cool if you want to look up some pictures online about those. They would be done in the same approach. They'd be stronger paint here, and then you whisk it out and let the brush sort of dry out as you go up. But yeah, you don't have to follow exactly my pattern. You can look up your own reference and do your own thing. That's the whole point of art, is I can show you some cool steps and some interesting tools and techniques. But the idea is you're going to take those tools and techniques and you're going to be creative and come up with your own original works of art. I'm going to do a little more purple fading out up here. And at this point, you sit back and you ask yourself, am I happy with this? Does this look done? And if it is, then you have finished your beautiful Northern Lights painting. And again, they're all different, they're all unique, and they're all beautiful. So I hope you enjoyed that painting. I'm going to see how the week goes. Maybe we can do some more. If you can send me your results, I would love to see how they turned out. So enjoy being creative and take care.